Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you, Sajada. Uh, Thank you, and hello, Tom. I can introduce Han and Rajagopal very quickly. They run the Kathai Kut Sangam, and they used to run the Gurukulam, which has now had to shut down because of the pandemic. And they essentially keep alive a folk art form in Tamil Nadu, and take it to the community. My first interaction with them was an all-nighter performance, quite like this. It is now 5:30 a.m. in the morning in India, and they had an all-nighter performance, performing excerpts from the Mahabharata, from the Indian epic, the Mahabharata. So it is. They were quite lovely, and they were quite revolutionary. Hello, they were quite brilliant in what they did, which is work with women and young women entering the form, which was traditionally only performed by men. So the Gurukulam unfortunately had to shut down because of the pandemic, and it was that process was kind of speeding up. I will let them talk a little bit more about that and much else. But yeah, Han and Rajagopal, welcome.
Hi, Tanvi.
Welcome.
Nice to
So
see
where
you.
are you and what time is it?
We are in Punjara Santango village and it's 5:30 in the morning.
5:30. Thank you for getting up so early. And where is it geographically in India so we can get an idea?
Geographically, we are in Tamil Nadu. So in the point of, when you look at a map of India on the right-hand side, about 80 kilometers from Chennai, Madras.
Madras, famous great Madras, yeah. So tell us a little bit, I think Tanvi gave an introduction. So you are working on a very traditional form. So tell us, how old is it? What is the form about?
I've prepared a kind of speech act.
Good.
So should we go there?
Yeah,
or is this the question answer?
No,
all
we
right.
Go with the speech.
We go with the speech. Okay.
Yes.
So Kathakut is a non-elite, complex physical and vocal form of rural open-air ensemble theatre, performed in Tamil Nadu, South India. Kathakut continues to flourish without any government subsidies. All-night performances are commissioned and paid for by local rural communities, yet the government and the media have described the theatre as a dying art form.
ஊரடங்கு சட்டம் உடனே போட்டு உலகை முடக்கி விட்டாய் கொரோனாவே எதிராக நீயும் புதிராக வந்து அட்டிப்படைக்கின்றாய் கொரோனாவே மண்ணையும் விண்ணையும் மாசுபடுத்தியதால் கோபம் கொண்டாயோ கொரோனாவே தன்மையாரியாமல் தவறுகள் செய்தோம் தண்டிக்க வேண்டாம் கொரோனாவே ஊரடங்கு சட்டம்.
We can't hear you. Can you say again? We can't hear you.
Rajagopal is a performer, an actor, playwright, director, and the founder of the Kathakut Gurukulam. He wrote this song in April 2020 about Corona. Curfews have been put in place everywhere. You're keeping the world hostage, Corona. Your appearance was a mystery that has thoroughly shaken and upset us, Corona. The pollution of Earth and universe have angered you, Corona. Committed out of our lack of introspection, don't castigate us, Corona. So for us, it feels like the human world has stalled. The virus has locked us in and locked us out. Nature is taking revenge, showing us that we are not the center of the universe, never were meant to be. We are waiting, holding our breath, even though we do not know what exactly we are waiting for. For can life return to normal? If so, to whose normal could or should that be? We are mourning what we have lost and loved most. Face-to-face contact, touch, infectious laughter, play, Scrabbles, the indefinable joy of live performances, seeing very young people immerse themselves fully into their roles. The sensation of being part of a team, a larger community of friends, colleague artists, visitors, and unknown authors, the Kathakut Gurukulam.
I had a dream of having Katakut and education under the same roof. Children would not have to drop out of school if they wanted to become an actor as I did. That dream became true in 2002 when with the help of my wife Anna, we founded the Kattakutu Gurukulam. This residential theatre school offered rural students equal time to train in the Kattakutu theatre and enjoy formal education. For the first time, girls got access to Kattakutu, which until then was performed only by men. The artistic training included acting, singing, music making, movement, and makeup. They also included wide range of workshops in other art forms by international and national guest teachers that introduced our students to different ways of making theater.
So Rajagopal is trying to use his English.
Good. Great. So you created a school. So you created a real school where girls, young women can go learn the craft of theater, get an education and a degree.
The degree, I mean, Kut has no degrees because it is a so-called folk theater.
Yeah.
But the children passed their formal educational exams as private candidates. This is a long story because the government has not been supporting us. So that is a reason for now putting a full stop behind the school. So this dream has come to abrupt, but not an unpredictable. And when the Gurukulam closed its doors on March 17, 2020, on the orders of the government, as did all other elementary schools in Tamil Nadu. While the reopening of all kinds of other institutions and establishments are constantly under reconsideration, students up to class 8 have not been back in school except for a short week break in between the two COVID waves. The dramatic and traumatic exclusion is having huge consequences for the lives of young rural children, cut off from online learning, from the discipline of study and the safety of being in school, with girls now getting married earlier and boys being sent to work. So this is one of the outcomes of the pandemic for a rural area in Tamil Nadu. For the youngest of our students, their hurried departure from the Gurukulam must have been incomprehensible. In particular, information about the seriousness of the pandemic had not yet really sank in March 2020. In the 18 years of its existence, the Kattakutu Gurukulam has been home to 182 students who stayed with us for periods of time varying from 1 to 10 years. As is often the case when one starts out on a new venture, however well planned, not all of its outcomes can be predicted or turn out as expected. We feel that the Gurukulam's biggest achievements have been that it has opened up all facets of the theatre to girls and young women, in addition to ensuring quality of performance and the creation of new repertoire. It is with a sense of sadness that we decided we had to let go of this dream, as few students made the choice to become professional performers. Age and the realization that our own bodies are no longer what they were played a role, in addition to recognizing that poor parents had started using the Gurukulam as a parking place for their children. Here, their kids got quality education, something that was often valued more than the performance and life skills our artistic training equipped their children with, enabling both parents to go to work. We would have liked a younger generation to take over the artistic teaching and running of the Gurukulam and establish a professional theatre company attached to the organization, but that was not to be. Being a professional performer is a difficult choice. Given the social stigma that continues to define Kattakutu as a folk theatre of the uneducated poor and historically a form of caste-based labor, most parents envisage a different future for their children. We realize that the younger generation too has different aspirations, often influenced by family demands and the desire for freedom to make their own choices. But how free will they be to make these choices now that the pandemic has affected livelihoods of so many? While the decision to stop has brought clarity, we feel exhaustion, not the joy or satisfaction that friends tell us we should experience after all that has been achieved. Finally, the eternal haggling with the bureaucracy is over, a bureaucracy unwilling to support us because our art and education did not fit the rigid colonial ideas of what respectable art and good school education should be like. As Indian arts critic Rustam Baruchi has phrased it so poignantly in his Theatre and the Coronavirus, a speech act in 9 episodes, in the solitude of the pandemic, we are confronted with ourselves and our ideals, and with the excruciating difficulty of not being able to plan the future of the organization and sustain it financially. In these times of a global pandemic, the arts, that is to say, some of them, have shifted from live to online performances and audiences that have become the new artistic real and perhaps ideal. For an embodied ensemble theatre such as Katakute and other marginalized folk art forms, this is a profoundly intimidating development. Most rural performers in India have no access to a digital infrastructure that would allow live streaming. They're also excluded from online artistic conversations and events, such as this one, that are being now organized by arts practitioners and art organizations in more privileged positions. Most rural artists do not speak the language that fits the public debate, nor are they in a position to speak truth to power. And whose truth would that be anyway, when they are looked upon within their own country by a colonial gaze, caught in modern categories that call these resilient forms of folk about to disappear. Folk practitioners are not used and have no need to verbalize their flexible embodied performance practice in discursive, explicit, abstract, rational, or persuasive terms that provide access to these debates. But it is not only the technological aspect of the digital divide bothers us. An unnamed jittery qualm makes us ask ourselves whether we really want to digitalize and virtualize Katakute. To which purpose, at which cost, for whom? Katakute's long duration performance events are characterized by a large degree of flexibility. For those who are not familiar with the theatre's vocabulary, this flexibility is difficult to decode and may come across as random bricolage. Flexibility was and is pivotal to sustain performers' precarious livelihoods, allowing them to adjust their performances to the demands and expectations of their patrons and audiences, who consider the performance event their own. The transition from live to digitally mediated performances risks taking away this ownership and the flexibility that characterizes all mediated performances and all live Katakute performances. Additionally, it would require us to take apart Katakute's embodied knowledge produced in and through performance, disembodying it, editing it into bite-sized chunks that can be fitted into the frame of a laptop, TV, or film screen.
Yeah.
I think that collaboration and generosity between artists who are each other's competitors in a tension-ridden field of the performing arts is not easy to achieve. Perhaps it takes a coronavirus pandemic to bring about change, a sharing of resources and a cooperation that will enable the next generation to preserve Katakute, ensure its quality and dignity as a profession for men and women, and support intergenerational generosity to guarantee the transmission of the tradition, in addition to putting in place a system of social security for its practitioners. That would be a great new normal to look forward to and another dream come true.
Amazing. That's quite a statement. And we were so sorry to hear that your school must close down, that young girls or women no longer have the choice to make, at least they could make up their mind. And it is also stunning when we just heard from Hungary, where the national movement is so strong that the government doesn't want anything outside and it's only folk tradition and they want to have just national thing. Meanwhile, in India, and this kind of right-wing government with the colonial gaze, as you said, does not want to support a tradition which in their eyes is not Shakespearean theater or something, and instead of also being proud, in a balanced way.
Well, the irony is
yeah.
that Katakute is a very Shakespearean theater.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, the performing arts are divided on the basis of not only colonial concepts, but also caste in India.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
as I said, performance is not a job like any other job. It's a caste-based form of physical labor. And that does not make it into an attractive option for young people as a career choice.
Yeah, and why this is important also, there's this wonderful and important book of Isabel Wilkinson. She just came out with a book, she's a Black writer, a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. She wrote about the migration in the 30s, about the Great Depression, but now she wrote, it's called Caste, The Reason of Our Unhappiness. And she said, also what's happening in America, it is not really about race. What it is a caste system. And she compared in her research, Nazi Germany and how they, created laws to disenfranchise the Jewish community, the German Jewish, day by day, months, year by laws. And then she talked that Martin Luther King, got a postcard from a leader from India at the time of the independence wars. And it was said, congratulations to your work. You are, the untouchable in America, And she draws these collections, and what you are living through, this kind of really discrimination against a form that should be supported. We had at the Siegel Center programs with Black Indians in the New Orleans Carnival. These are Black community who also has their own interpretation. They're not allowed, they're harassed, it's not supported because it's not the official way. So we are really sorry to hear that, and we admire your efforts. Do you think in any way it will come back? Will it be, if a government changes, is there a chance that this vision, this stream will come back?
We don't know, Rajagopal. I don't think it's particularly linked to one or the other government. A caste, I don't think it's so easy to compare caste in India with caste in America. These are two very culturally different areas and have huge histories as to
very
how
different. But she says
it has to do with the mindset. I mean, caste is in the mind.
Yeah. But
so
she says,
as long as a colonial kind of, or the reduplication of the colonial administration has taken place, and so they continue to look down on these forms of making theater without actually knowing what is happening, what kind of enormous resources of skills, of knowledge they harbor. And that has nothing to do with what kind of art forms these are, that has to do with who practices these arts. And that is not only Dalits, I must say, this is lower caste. I mean, there's only talk about Dalits, but there's so many other people in difficult circumstances who are caste, not outside, not untouchable, but who are minorities. These are particularly the castes, the non-agrarian caste where the performers come from. And they have no way of speaking up. They have no language of speaking up because they don't speak the right language. And they have no advocacy of people taking up their cause, trying to kind of facilitate this towards the government, if the government would be willing to listen.
Yeah,
I quote the bureaucracy. This is the educational bureaucracy.
Yeah,
they were asking us why we were teaching theater to the children as part of the curriculum. Theater is an extracurricular activity, in their opinion.
Yeah, it's stunning. So we're hearing the transitional music, we have always our 20-second segment. So Hanne and Rajagopal, thank you so much also for giving it an insight of something I had no idea about, and we share, your sense of loss, and we say, yes, it should be supported, and of course that should be a part of a wide landscape where 1,000 flowers bloom. So we move now to Hong Kong. It's a very big jump for us, perhaps in distance-wise. It's not as far from India. So Chiu is with us again. He was one of the early Siegel Talk participants also in the time of the social and political upheaval. So how are you doing, and where are you, and what time is it?
Oh, I'm in Hong Kong, and the time is 8:22 in the morning. Yeah. So, how are you?
Good. Well,
Good to talk to you again. Yes.
yeah, it's good to be with you and to hear again. We are almost half through our marathon. I can't believe it. We have almost 12 hours behind us, and it's
That's
been so
right.
enlightening and so
Yeah.
interesting and refreshing. So how are you? How first, before we come to the bigger question, how is the theater community doing? How are you doing in the time of Corona?
Oh, yeah, I had put on weight during the high time of the pandemic. I must say that in Hong Kong, the infection of the coronavirus, has leveled kind of, and I think Hong Kong, with a population of 7.5 million, we are just having about 10 new cases every day, and most of which have been actually imported. So we actually, going back to the office to work, and unlike the other time, when everyone stay at home, when I cooked a lot, ate a lot, but then of course, we develop ideas of doing things online. So we have been organizing performances, conferences, film shows, and even workshops online, which is amazing in a sense. It used to be a time, when we had to fly from here to there to actually engage in the international exchange. But coronavirus actually leads us to a situation where things like this, this kind of international exchange happens. And it can be quite enlightening. And it's also very intimate, actually, because you actually are sitting there also, although in New York, but you are just a foot from me.
Yeah,
So,
it's incredible, and the variety of of experiences of the moment is just so incredible. You have 10 cases. We heard earlier
yeah.
from the situation in India, where it is slightly better in some regions than a month ago, but cases are exploding, and also what we will hear, from Indonesia, there is no longer really adequate help available. And if the numbers continue like this, it will be a devastating effect. India, if the numbers are right, we hear from Tanvi, only 2% of that great continent, or almost of this great country, has been vaccinated. So what is ahead, we do not really know. Meanwhile, Hong Kong has been perhaps the most successful country, right, in the world when it comes to Taiwan.
I'm not sure about that.
Taiwan,
Yeah.
New Zealand have similar things, but so this is enlightening to hear. But how is the political situation working out? The Corona thing seems to be not as life-threatening, but how's the political situation for theater workers at the moment?
Yeah, it's getting from bad to worse, I must say, actually. There are quite a few, actually, hundreds of democracy fighters being imprisoned. Some are yet to appear in court. The popular pro-democracy Apple Daily has been actually repressed, in that the editors have been said to have violated the draconian national security law imposed onto Hong Kong people by Beijing. We are very much living in an Orwellian situation, where the electoral system has been so-called perfected, but in fact, this is just to make sure that all the patriots are going to rule the country or rule Hong Kong, the city rather. And the city is very much becoming part of China and very much like other cities in China. And what we see is that human rights, press freedom, and rule of law, they are all at stake. And of course, we are mindful of what Havel said, speaking the truth. And speaking the truth, we do. But more and more of us are doing that allegorically, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Is this taking part in this call? Is this putting you potentially in danger?
Well, if I say something, that I endorse your government in doing this or that, to China or to Hong Kong, if I endorse that, I might get into trouble for having, supporting, foreign subversion and things like that. Yeah.
And we are just talking about theater, the situation in India, about the search for truth, which is in science, which is also in the arts, and which should be a guiding light for everything, in the times, after the Enlightenment. So, do you follow the situation of, for example, in India? Do you hear about that, or is Hong Kong at the moment so busy with itself and occupied that there very little comes to the surface?
Actually, yeah, we do have news about the situation in India, and personally, I'm in connection with some friends in India, from Bangalore to New Delhi to Bhubaneswar. Actually, there has been a collaboration which is supposed to be an actual tour. What happened was in before the coronavirus broke out, people from 9 different countries, they actually assembled in the north of France, and we collaborated on a piece called The Spice Road. We made the draft and we performed 5 times in northern France, and then people went home and we're supposed to meet again, and then we in Kathmandu, and then we rehearsed that again, and then we would tour Nepal, India, and then Hong Kong, Taiwan, as well as Macau. I think I have a little clip of that. Maybe
show us.
Tanvi can show us.
So the Spice Road is that old road that went from Asia to Europe.
It's
Well, thank you for sharing. So you were able to create something online that
That's
otherwise
right.
would not have existed, and potentially many more people saw it, right?
Yeah, that's right. We actually, had the actors coming from four continents, from Peru, from Uganda, Egypt, and then France, and then Germany, as well as from Hong Kong and South Asia. We had a Nepalese young person. We had also a young actress from Bhubaneswar. So nine of them actually perform in front of the computer, yeah, via Zoom, all at the same time, a different time of the day, depending on where they are. But yeah, yeah, we did 5 shows, and there will be another one actually, but it will be a recorded one to be broadcast actually at the Seoul International Environmental Theater Festival on the 23rd of August. Yes.
Fantastic. So this is something that actually was not interrupted, it just changed. It had a
That's right,
it had a metamorphosis, almost like a, the butterfly, that has a different form and before transforming.
Right.
So what do you see? Do you think that the COVID crisis has never existed and will not exist? That is not the reason that making theater is complicated. You don't foresee complications in Hong Kong for a bigger outbreak, a second, third, fourth wave, or anything?
Well, some years ago, not so long ago, we experienced SARS.
Yes.
All right. If we remember that, that wasn't actually a pandemic. And then at that time already, because of the things we are doing to our environment and nature, it's almost unpreventable that COVID-19 and such things, happen. So I think my personal view is that if we don't change our lifestyle, we do not seriously cope with climate change or global warming and things like that, we are in for many more pandemics in the future, I think. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we said that throughout the talk, perhaps COVID-19 was like a dress rehearsal, where like in theater, and the real threat might come, and if there's a virus, there's no vaccine coming, or, malaria will enter, Europe because of climate change. It's getting much, much warmer, and the raising temperatures. I had a little bonsai tree, which I had for a long time on my heater, because it got so warm in New York, and then all of a sudden it got very cold, and the house put the heat back on, and overnight the tree died, because the temperature became so high of that heater. And so that's, people say 1-2 degrees of raising temperature of the earth will have devastating consequences, like a patient who says, if I have in Celsius 41, 42, it's life-threatening, but you have 43, you're not going to survive. So it's about very small changes. So how is the situation? Are you in contact globally still with the theater artists, or has that political crisis in Hong Kong also led to a bit more isolation for you?
Yeah, well, we used to travel a bit, to make the international contact, and we perform, in different places, apart from locally, of course. But these days, we had to rely on the internet, actually. And of course, to theater people, we are not exactly very happy with the situation, because we believe that theater, although it can be done on the internet, but still, the magic of theater is doing it live. Yes. Yeah, I don't know, about Hong Kong being isolated from the rest of the world. But actually, you might have actually read in the news that a lot of people in Hong Kong are leaving.
Yeah. They're going to London,
different places.
To the UK.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that includes, theater friends that I know.
Are you considering?
No, not really. No, I was born and bred up in Hong Kong, and I think, yeah, I will try and stay.
Mhm. When you said we now do allegorical terms, it reminded me when once we had a big event about theater and art from Iran, and the playwrights and novelists said it's very hard to write about anything. There's censorship. Often people who were inspecting cars or all of a sudden are in charge of censorship for literature, whatever. And they said the only thing they could do is about mermaids. And because everybody likes mermaids, they're kind of unpolitical, and somehow there seemed to be an agreement that they are safe. So there is a whole industry that developed, about interpretation of stories about mermaids, which of course were allegorical interpretations, like often films.
And about dictatorial kings as well,
Yeah,
they are ruthless, and then seemingly there might be just a fairy tale, and then when the audience hear that the king is dead, they erupted in applause. Actually, that kind of thing. Really.
That kind of thing might happen. That often also films on Asian countries then go back to Middle Ages as a metaphor. It is okay because of course it's a king and it's a monarchy, and that should be overturned, even so it's a disguised message perhaps. So perhaps we will also see lots of fairy tales coming out from Hong Kong, like in the eastern parts of Europe during the time of the Iron Curtain. There were so many film productions and radio plays, musicals, and stories, about fairy tales, and where you could imagine a different world, but in a safe way. So we hope that you will continue, that the Hong Kong art scene also, will find its way to be there for everybody who's there. And we are of course worried, and because we think education, as what Hanne and Rajagopal put together, the access to education, access to health, the access to the arts are basic human rights, as the access to democratic, elections. This is the basic what we need, and if it's endangered, everything is endangered. So we are quite.
Anyway, Bala Sarkar of India, he used to do something called the intimate theater. He was doing theater in the classroom. Everywhere can be theater, like for example, living theater in the United States. They used to perform theater in their bedrooms. So
so we will see
everywhere.
Good, that's a good transition. So thank you so much. So we have Tom Walker here from the Great Living Theater. It's a little bit darkish. If you have any light, Tom, it would be good, but it's not necessary. But come a bit closer. That's good. So Tom, how are you doing? It's about also 8:45 in the evening here in New York. What is going on?
Well, I'm involved mostly in archive matters as far as the Living Theater is concerned, overseeing publications. We put out 2 books by Julian Beck last year. His wonderful diary from 1957, when he was arrested with the Catholic Worker and Dorothy Day for a month, protesting the mandatory anti-air raid drills, which were mandatory in New York City in 1957. Everyone had to take cover against the future atom bombs, and the Catholic Worker people went out to protest and were arrested. So that came out at Fast Books Press from Oregon, and also 2 plays by Julian, Prometheus from 1978 and The Archaeology of Sleep from 1983. And now I'm involved in proofreading the final draft of Kate Bredeson's edition of Judith Malina's diaries from 1957 to 1971, which are quite exciting. So this takes up a lot of time and energy and inspiration. And I'm also working with a new group that organized itself amongst several associate artistic directors of the Living Theater who went off to form a new group called Al Limite, which means to the limit in Spanish, Al Limite. And they put on a play last week, actually, a live theater play in New York City, one of the first maybe since COVID, at the New Ohio Theater on Christopher Street. It was called the Liminal Archive, and it was a immersive voyage into the here and now in the post-COVID moment and the actors' reflections about it. They divided the audience into about 6 different groups of 4 people each, and they went through 6 different stations, viewing the actors in sort of box-like atmospheres where the actors performed their individual interpretations. One is a Iranian dissident from in exile, and she created a performance piece. Another was a Buddha who talked to us about the difficulties of the here and now and isolation in your apartment. And his consolation was his devotion to costume jewelry. And he gave a little bit of costume jewelry to each member of the audience. Other actors had more immersive actions where you would peep in through the curtains of these various booths. And then there was a general physical action near the end, which brought everyone together, and there were videos. This was the fruit of almost 40 different people from around the world who had contributed spoken word and video and ideas. And the audience really got off on it. It was sold out. I mean, there were only about 25 or 26 people every night. And it got a great review in this online publication called Vulture.
Mhm.
A lot of this is almost unbeknownst to me. I'm the dramaturg, and I follow along in the wake of these young people. And it reminds me a bit of the Spice Road of our colleague from Hong Kong. Young people are not stopping. They are going ahead. The COVID is not stopping them. They are continuing to create and create new worlds for themselves. And this liminal archive, and I think the Spice Road are very similar. The liminal archive, of course, was live. They did 8 shows in 4 nights, 2 shows a night. And I think they'll continue to do great work. They're connected with refugee actions and people in Mexico City and Sao Paulo and Palestine. And I just, they're way out ahead of me. I'm running in their wake, trying to catch up. I'm the Living Theater avatar. I know all the people who were in the Living Theater in 1968, and I'm still there, still trying to hang in there. And I mean, I'm 74, and there's no pension. It's dreadful.
Yeah,
But
there should be a big living theater pension for everyone.
where's that MacArthur grant?
Yeah, that is a terrible situation, and it should be different. Tom, speaking about the living theater, Julian, Judith, and you, in a way, they speak through you. Hearing what we all heard all day from India, I don't know if you were able to join in.
I have been listening all day. It's been
fantastic. Did you like it so far?
absolutely. I'm with India.
Yeah. So what
It's real.
what would they say? What was Julian say? What would Judith say? About all of it.
Well, the street theater that some of the people exposed was very much like living theater that we did in Brazil and all over Italy for 20 years. Judith and Julian left the theater formally in 1970 to do street theater. And they did it for 7 years, as long as they could survive off it. And then they went back into regular theater venues, and sometimes doing street theater and sometimes doing regular theater. But that was the struggle. The theater is in the street. That was the final lines of Paradise Now in 1968, 69. The theater is in the street. And it seems like a lot of our brother, sister practitioners in India are doing exactly that, which is wonderful. And of course, some people would say, and maybe it's cultural appropriation, the street in India is theater. But that's a Western, analysis, perhaps. But Judith, and you see it now in her diaries that I've been rereading, for her, theater was always politics, was always political action. She was encouraged by Martin Buber and Eric Gutkin and Dorothy Day and the General Strike for Peace in 1955-57. And the Peace Now people in America constantly were her preoccupation. And often in France and Italy, when they would do Paradise Now and Mysteries in Smaller Pieces, they would get criticism from the left-wing Marxist-Leninists that, oh, you pacifists, to hell with you. What are you doing? You're unreal. You're not realistic. And the Living Theater would persevere and continue and suffer and continue these holy rituals for peace and diversity. Sometimes we had African American people in our company, and some of the black activists would say, "Why are you working with those white people?" But our good brothers and sisters, Jim Anderson and Rufus Collins and others, would say, "I've been there. I'm going to work with these people because they're real." Yeah. So we plowed through a lot of controversy, and we're still doing it. We were up at the Bread and Puppet Theater in 2015 for a memorial for Judith Malina, and we did her last play, No Place to Hide, where we impersonate the Lenape Indian tribe being thrown out of Manhattan and the Trail of Tears. And I guess we made the mistake of speaking in the first person, although we spoke with the Lenape tribal elders about it. We said we were thrown out of Manhattan, and some of the Living Theater people were accosted for speaking in the first person. We should have spoken in the third person. They were thrown out, but we live and learn, and we changed the text. And I have a poem. You want me to read it?
I would love to hear what you selected for us, and tell us a little bit. Why did you choose this poem?
Well, it challenges the differences of the races and the religions, and it just happened to come up on my computer. And sometimes I do things very impulsively, and I'm working with a lot of poetry now because I'm not doing so much theater acting, and I'm working more on my memoirs and poetry, and I got to reinvent myself, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Did you write it?
Yes.
Yes, right. When did you write it?
Maybe a couple of years ago, I think. It's called There Is a Time. There is a time when black and white will live together. There is a time. There is a time when Arab and Jew will live together. There is a time. There is a time when Jew and Christian will live together. There is a time. When is the time, I ask? There is a time when black juice and Jewish blood and white stuff dissolve, and pains and tears and crack up are held down. But we are now only in the midst of the drama. It's not over, not over, not over now. Why did the people kill all those in front of, in back of, all around Esther? Why? Why did the third caliph kill the second caliph, kill the son-in-law? Why? Why did the popes kill Borgia, Sforza, Borgia, Farnese, Medici? Why? I'm sure I know. It's blood feuds. And the very rich of whatever race holding on, holding to power. The fat is in the fire, the rose of Sharon under glass, the party's on. 2 Oscars is not enough. Reparations are on the table. Jerusalem is blowing up. Next year, underground. There is a time when it will be worked out, we say. But now we are in the midst of the drama, living together. As others are being killed and killing, we can instantaneously communicate that we are late. Global fate. I am a visitor from out of state. There is a time, and it is now, and it is not.
Wow, that's almost a biblical poem, or a timeless and in a Brechtian sense, and referring to almost a circular history. That things repeat itself, but with the hope that one day it will not be the way it is now, that things will change. Tom, you have seen change in your life. Have you expected when you started out in the 60s and early 70s? What did you expect that would happen in these big changes? You know, you lived through and saw, whether it was the time of the Vietnam War, whether it was a falling of the Berlin Wall, or the opening, as Thomas Oberender always says. So, do you feel that things did change really, or did they stay the same?
Things are
Just
always
different.
Things are always changing, whether it's 9/11 or the COVID or the Trump. Things are always changing, and to what extent we roll with the punches and survive and get through it. The young people have so much energy, but of course sometimes that's just directed into armies and fascists who depended on the young people. There's this wonderful book about how the Nazis were all on drugs and they gave them Parvitin, and all the fighters who went into France were on dope, and that's why they could fight for 4 days without stop. But a lot of the young people are great hope, and yet the old people have the wisdom. We've seen it all. And I'm a little worried, about my own future, but that's a personal thing. And a lot of the reason I was able to keep working with the Living Theater is because I used savings that I had, to be quite honest. Not very great savings, but a little bit. And now they're running out, and I'm having family problems about getting the last bit out. You know how that can be. And, I hope to live to 80, 85, 89. I'm in a 6th floor walk up here in the East Village. It's not going to be easy. But I try to remain optimistic and hopeful. Judith and Julian gave me a lot of, I must say, rereading Judith's diaries, my God, what difficulties they went through with money. They had these hit plays, Frankenstein, Antigone, Paradise Now, all over Western Europe, and yet they couldn't pay the hotel bills. It was just hand to mouth constantly, and emotional problems and so forth. It was not Paradise Now. And I take that with a grain of salt. Sometimes it's better to just go off into the woods and try to live calmly out of the maelstrom. But I'm dedicated, like our friend who's going to stay in Hong Kong, come hell or high water. God bless you. And the folks in India who are dealing with so much difficulty day by day. I have this terrible thing about India. I think it's all snakes, it's cobras and so forth. And I know that's not true. So I have to come to India and come to Kerala and come to even Calcutta and Mumbai before I die.
Yeah, give a New York theater workshop, from New
Little
York,
East
from the Living
Village.
Theater. Yeah. Mm.
I mean, I can teach workshops by the back of my hand. In fact, through you, Frank, I got a gig through Thomas Oberender and wonderful kids. I taught a workshop in the Berliner Festspiel this spring, kids from Hanover. And they did an incredible Artaud plague that I taught them on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And so that was wonderful. Things are happening. I do workshops in Sardinia and Italy.
Yeah, so listen, if you guys can, invite Tom as long as he's willing to go. And he says not just writing his poems, even so that is very important. Tom, what are the big lessons from the Living Theater that can be applied for the young artists who are listening, or the, developed artists? What is something we say, this is something we did and that is important. You should remember, make your own decisions, but this is something that's of importance.
My cynical self says you got to have a day job, but my idealistic self is, continue to work for world peace and progressivism and be strong in the face of people who say that violence is the only way, whether they're from the left or the right. The struggles can be really tough on the right, the white supremacists and so forth. But then you find, there are guys from the hood who are saying, come on, guy, you got to have a gun. And you got to talk about that too. And it's thankless work, but I see several young people, my brothers and sisters in Alamite, are right there, and they're beautiful and strong. And, it's not an easy road. Be prepared for difficulty. But be smart, be careful. Try to find extra help wherever you can. Hustle anybody, hustle Hollywood. There's a Hollywood group now that wants to make a biopic about Judith and Julian. And Garrick, Judith and Julian's son, and I are saying, bring it on, we're ready. Please do whatever you want to do and pay us, $10,000. Sometimes Judith and Julian would get criticism for making Hollywood films. Julian made The Cotton Club, Judith made The Addams Family, but they said, to hell with that. I'm taking the money and recycling it into the good stuff. So be sharp, be tricky. The battle is long. How are you going to be awake at 5 a.m, my dear?
I don't know yet. I have to see. I didn't think it fully through, maybe.
I'm going to be there. I want to hear Peter Schumann and Thomas Oberender at 5 and 6 in the morning.
Peter Schumann is preparing a performance. He's going to do a
All right, at 5 in the morning. I'll be there.
Yes, and he is. I mean, he said, "Can I do it at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock?" That's when I'm awake. I said, "Sure." It is a good thing. That's what we.
Peter is really strong at 85 or whatever he is.
Incredible what he has created, what he has done. It's a great privilege to have him on the chorus of everybody. So,
listen, you want me back at midnight?
Yeah, we want you on the additional spot, which we have. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all right.
Just listen in and be with us, and that will be good. This is with the Egyptian, right? With Dahlia and others. So yeah, so
I don't have to talk so much. I'll just be there.
Fantastic. So we are slowly how would you say, transforming. We are transporting us into the next session. Officially now, we have half of the marathon already behind us. I cannot believe it. It feels like it just started, but we have the first 9 hours behind us. Tanvi, how are you? Have you been awake all the time?
The first 12 hours, Frank, and yes.
The first 12 hours. Yes, what did I say? 9 hours? Yeah, the first 12. That's amazing. So how are you? What time is it now in India for you?
It's 6:30 a.m. We've been here exactly 12 hours.
12 hours. And
how are you doing, Frank?
Good. So far, so good, and all without doping so far. So that's good. But maybe that will all change. But we now welcome our new set. We have Hentschker or Eddie with us from China, who will talk a bit how it is. Life is in Beijing